Hello everyone. In the previous video we learned about letter writing, and if you remember I taught you how to write a letter of inquiry, right? So I also gave you a format of how to write the letter. I'm going to review the format once again, and today we're going to learn two more letters. So you have three letters altogether for your course, for you to study for unit 2. The first one was inquiry, and now today what we're going to learn is about writing a complaint letter and writing a requisition letter. Alright, so letter writing, as I spoke to you the other day, let me put this here on the board. What did I talk to you about letter writing? I said the acceptable method of writing a letter is writing everything onto the left hand side, isn't it? You don't have to write on the, write the date on the right hand side and then come to the left hand side and write your to address and then the body of the letter. You don't have to, do all that. You can write everything on the left hand side, alright? So to start with, I'll number the letter writing format today so that it will be easy for you to understand what it is. You will start with the date, okay, and then the second thing is the to address, okay, and followed by the salutation. The next point would be the subject. The fifth point would be the body of the letter, and the sixth point would be your complimentary clause. The complimentary clause. Okay. Now these are the different parts of your letter. So as I said, the date. Let's start with the date. If you remember, I told you that the date can be written in any form which is convenient and comfortable to you. You don't have to follow a set format of writing the date. You can write 1st January 2020, or you can write 1.1.2020, or you can write January 1st 2020. The choice is yours, whichever is comfortable with you. And then the next is the to address. Now what did I tell you? After the date you don't have to write the from address. Directly start with the to address. The to address is given in full. Give all the details of your address in full and then go to the next one, which is the salutation. And what did I say is the salutation? You will start with dear sir / madam, and you will use the / madam only when you don't know the gender of the person that you are addressing your letter to, right? Okay, and then after the salutation we will go with the subject of your letter. What is the subject? What is the main point of your subject? Write it here. Now your subject should be written in such a way that the person who's reading your letter would know what the letter is about. For example, if you're submitting a letter to me, I would not have to read your complete body to understand what you're talking about. Just the subject should be so clear, short and sweet that I would be able to understand what your letter is about when I look at the subject. And then we spoke about the body of the letter. Now what is the body of the letter? The actual part of your letter. What are you trying to talk to the person that you're addressing in your letter? That is written in the body of the letter. And then we come to the complimentary clause. If you remember, I spoke to you about complimentary clauses. I told you about different complimentary clauses and which situation and which person to use which complimentary clause, right? If you haven't, if you don't remember what it was, you can look at the previous video that I already did. Everything is explained to you in detail. Okay. So what we learned in the previous video was a letter of inquiry. What did I say inquiry was? Inquiry is to ask. Right? You're writing a letter to ask about, a few things. I was talking to you about the Samsung products, where you're, planning to buy a Samsung product and you're asking the manager the details or the description of the product. That is an inquiry. You're inquiring about the product. And as I said, in case you're applying for a course, you're inquiring about the course. If you want to take admission into a college, you're writing a letter of inquiry to the principal or to the PR of the college asking for details about the college, which means you're asking for information about the college. You are inquiring about the college. This was what I taught you the other day. Today you're going to learn, the first letter that you're going to learn today is a letter of complaint. A letter of complaint. Okay? Now, a letter of complaint. We are all very good at complaining, aren't we? We love complaining, no? We love complaining. We are never satisfied with anything. But then this letter of complaint is something that is genuine. If you want to complain, if you want to, register your complaint against something, you should be able to write it in the form of a letter. Now, what are the different, areas where you might complain? Yeah, for example, if you're studying in a college, you might complain about certain facilities which are not available in the college. Yeah, or the easiest complaint that you might have when you're studying in a college is against your faculty, isn't it? Everybody wants to complain about some faculty or the other. You have an issue with the faculty, you want to complain against him or her. All right, so complaint. For example, you're living in a colony where the roads are not laid properly, or there are a lot of potholes. Now, this being a rainy season, you might have a lot of potholes and small pits, and something, the road is not laid properly, so you would like to complain against the bad roads, or you would like to complain against water. You're facing scarcity of water in your locality. Water, the municipal water is not being supplied to you. Maybe 2 days or alternate days you are having problem with that, or maybe with the park. There are so many complaints that you can actually raise. So in order to write a letter of complaint also, the format remains the same. That is the reason I reviewed the complete format now. You will write it in the same format. Only thing that would change in the letter of complaint is the body, right? In the body, you will state the reason of your complaint. You will tell what is your complaint and what has been happening and what are you looking for the officials to do. That is another important thing, guys. When you're writing a letter of complaint, just don't write the letter of the complaint and leave it there. Tell them what should they do, what are you looking for, what kind of an action would you want them to take against the complaint that is registered against you. That should come in the body. And the body is exactly like what you wrote earlier. In the earlier letter you learned about writing how to inquire about a certain thing. Now in this letter you will do like you started the earlier letter, where you will introduce yourself in one line. You will tell the person from which place you are, because when you're raising a complaint, that person, whoever is the authority or whomever you're addressing the letter, they should be able to take action against your complaint. If you don't tell them where you are from and what is your name, they will not be able to help you with your complaint. So start with your names and tell them which place that you come from, and then register your complaint. Tell them what is your complaint and for how long have you been facing this and what would you want them to do next. So these are a few things that you must write in the complaint, so that necessary action can be taken against your complaint. So the only change that you will find in the letter of complaint is the body of the letter. The complimentary clause also will remain the same, because if you're writing a complaint letter, maybe you're writing to the GHMC officer, or maybe you're writing to the superintendent of some particular department, whomever you are addressing, I'm sure that person would not be known to you personally, isn't it? That person that you're writing your letter to would definitely be a stranger to you. So as I said, the complimentary clause for strangers would be yours sincerely. So everything remains the same in this letter also, except for the body of the letter. Alright, so this is how you're going to write your complaint letter. Right? If you look at your textbook, you have certain tasks given here to write a letter of complaint. So follow this format of letter writing and register your complaint. And as I said, do not forget to ask the authorities to take immediate action depending on the grievousness of your complaint. Alright. For example, you have a broken water pipe and lots of water is being wasted every day. Now, what should the authorities do? That has to be attended to immediately, isn't it? It requires immediate attention. So what should you do? You should ask for immediate action. You can tell them that you've wasted gallons of water so far and you would not want to waste any more water. You want them to come and take immediate required necessary steps. So that's how you write. Now your paragraph depends on the grievousness of your complaint. Alright? So this is about complaint letter. The next letter that I'm going to talk to you about today is going to be the requisition letter. Okay. Now, what is the requisition letter? The word itself is telling you. A letter of requisition is a letter where you are requesting. Okay. Now, especially in letters, where you are putting forward your requisition, your tonality, the tone in which you write your letter should be very humble, should be very polite. Okay, you cannot be rude, you cannot be very rough in the way you approach the person to whom you are requesting. Now, take a small example of requesting at home. You are requesting your parents to buy you something. How would you request them? You would not demand them, isn't it? The way you talk itself is going to change. You humble yourself. You talk very softly, isn't it? Especially when it is a request. If you want your parents to give you something, immediately you try to soften up. You lower your voice and you talk to them very softly. And another thing, let me tell you, if you want to request your parents for something, the first thing that you guys do is 2 or 3 days prior to going and asking your parents, your behavior is going to change drastically. The way you talk, the way you behave, and sometimes you do all the work at home even before you are asked to do it. Just because 2 days from then, from now, you're going to request your parents for something. So you are laying a platform, you are preparing a platform which will make it easily accessible to you to go and talk to your parents. You do that, isn't it? So requesting is where you are going to be humble, where you are going to be very, very polite in the way you write your letter. Now, when will you write a letter of request? There are so many instances, there are so many situations, so many circumstances where you have to request. Okay, sometimes it is your right, but still you cannot utilize or you are right there. You are supposed to request. Okay, so you write your tone. As what you have to keep in mind when it comes to a letter of request is the tone in which you write, the sentences that you frame, the vocabulary that you use should all be humble. They should not be rude. You should not anger the person who's reading your letter of request. Your request will be attended to, or your request, will be accepted depending on what you write in the body of the letter. Yeah, you start with your name, the place that you come from, and then start with the request. I request you to kindly help me with this complaint, or I request you to help me. Try using words which are soft, which are polite, which are well mannered, and which are parliamentary in nature. You cannot use vocabulary which is unparliamentary in nature. Alright, so you should be very, very soft. As I said, all the letters, the style of writing all the letters is the same. You will write everything from the margin to the left hand corner, and then the only change that would happen in the complaint and the requisition and the inquiry letter that you learned in the previous video is just the body of the letter. It's just the body of the letter. And now request here depends upon whom you are requesting. For example, if you are requesting one of your teachers, or if you are requesting the principal, you already know them, isn't it? What did I say? If you are writing a letter of request, for example, you were given an assignment, and the deadline is done, and you haven't submitted your assignment. Now you are going to write a letter of request to your concerned teacher, asking the teacher to extend the date of your assignment. Now here what's happening is, you know who the teacher is, right? So you know the teacher. The teacher is not a stranger to you. If she or he is a stranger to you, then what did I say? You will use the complimentary clause, yours sincerely, right? But since the teacher is known to you, what is the complimentary clause that you should use? And this is universal, not just in India. Anywhere abroad or wherever you are, if you are addressing a letter to your teachers, to the higher authorities that of your institution, your complimentary clause should be yours obediently. So in case your request is towards a teacher or towards the principal, see that your complimentary clause is your obediently. Okay, yours obediently. So depending on whom you are addressing your request, try changing your complimentary clause, else the whole letter format remains the same. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is the body of the letter has to change. Change the body depending on the situation in which you are writing a letter. Okay, and now when it comes to body of the letter, I have certain things that I have to discuss with you. You cannot write an essay for a body of the letter. Now when I say essay, I mean to say you can't write 3 and 4 and 5 paragraphs in the body of the letter. Nobody would want to read a lengthy letter. It is very boring and it is waste of time. So don't write a lengthy letter where you include a lot of paragraphs. Try writing a letter which is short and sweet. Use only around 8 to 10 sentences and not more than that. And sometimes, even lesser than 8 to 10 sentences. Because, a paragraph, if you remember in the previous videos when I taught you paragraph writing, I told you that a paragraph should consist of 8 to 10 lines, and that is the maximum that you can write in a paragraph. Okay, so try reducing the paragraph also to around 3 to 4 lines. Your letter should be attractive. It should, arrest the attention of the reader. All right, and when the reader reads your letter, the moment they read that 3 or 4 lines, they should be, immediate action should be taken against your complaint or your request or your inquiry. If you write a very boring, lengthy letter, the person would take a lot of time to read and understand what you are trying to ask, and sometimes they are put off. They would not like to take any action against what you have written. So, regarding the body of the letter, you have to be very, very concise. You have to be very brief. And what I would suggest is, any part that you're writing, whether it is a paragraph, an essay, anything that is written, I always would suggest that you have a rough draft before you write the main draft. A rough draft, when you jot down a few lines or a few sentences, and when you reread that draft, you yourself will think that this sentence was not necessary at all. This portion of the letter is not required at all. I can condense it into few words or maybe one or two sentences instead of a paragraph. So a rough draft is actually going to help you write a better main draft. So always whenever it is writing a letter, see that you put down the rough draft first, read it again and again. And when you are reading it, you yourself understand that this was not necessary at all. I should not have written this. I can remove these few words and condense it into 2 or 3 more words. That's all. I don't have to write a lengthy, such a lengthy letter. So put a rough draft first and then write the main draft. And as I said, the main draft or the main body of your letter should be brief, up to the point. Whether it is a letter of complaint or inquiry or requisition, it should be up to the point. Just be very brief. It should be crisp. Okay, crisp in the sense, the moment the person reads your letter, they should understand what you wanted to tell them. Sometimes, especially with your answers in the exam, now, you haven't studied well and you don't know the answer to a particular question. What do? You have no choice. You have to apply. You have to write that question that is given to you. You have to write the answer. So, with that little knowledge that you have about that particular answer, or sometimes no knowledge at all, you write pages after pages, line after line. You use so many words which has nothing to do with the question. Isn't it? You do that just to confuse the examiner, because there is a phrase in English, right? If you are unable to convince somebody, confuse them. And this is what you do in the exams. Yeah, you are testing the patience of the examiners in your exam. You don't know the answer, but you write the answer, right? Just because you want to get marks, isn't it? Now, this kind of a technique cannot be used with writing letters, because letter writing is not in 3 or 4 pages. It has to be crisp and only on one side of the page, isn't it? When I say one side of the page, in the exam, you are allowed to write on the next side of the page as well, as a continuation. But in reality, when you are submitting a letter, whether it is a letter of complaint, requisition, or any form of letter, see that it is written only on one side of the paper. And then for the next continuation of the letter, go to a fresh page, but don't write it behind that paper. Alright, this is another thing that you have to keep in mind. This has nothing to do with your examination, please. In the examination, you can continue on the next page and continue writing. But then what I would suggest is, especially, when you're writing, your letter is very lengthy. It comes to around 2 or 3 pages. But the same letter, if it is typewritten, alright, you will see that it comes only on one page. Yeah, all that matter, everything, the complete format of your letter from the date to the complimentary close comes only in one page, because when you're typing, the letters are smaller and the space given is lesser, and it happens only in one page, right? But just in case you have to write something, which is really serious and grievous, and you have to explain everything in detail, you can actually continue the letter. Go to the next page and continue. But if you're typing it, see that you type the second part of your letter on a fresh page. Don't continue and go back to the next side of the page. It doesn't look professional when you're doing that. Alright? But what I would like to tell you is, please do not go to write paragraphs after paragraphs. Try condensing the body of your letter. Make it crisp, short and sweet, so that the person who's reading your letter would be, would be willing to take action against, whatever you asked for immediately. This is another thing. And another thing, when you've written a letter, whatever is the purpose of your letter, that should be satisfied. Okay? In case you're inquiring about a product, the way you write a letter, and the reply on that particular inquiry that you have written depends on you. The way you've written the letter, it actually depends on you. In case you've written a crisp, brief, short and sweet letter, you can expect a reply very immediately, because the person would like the way you have written it and he would give a reply immediately. So, in case you are getting an immediate reply, that shows that you have written an excellent letter. Yeah, your body, everything, as I said, it depends on the body of your letter. Getting an immediate reply or not getting a reply at all depends on what you have written and the way you have written, right? As I said, request, it's not required that necessary that anybody and everybody that you request should accept it and should, oblige to your request. It is not required, it's not necessary. But as I said, if a request has to be answered, if you have to be helped, if action has to be taken against your request, it all depends on the language that you use in your request letter. Your language, as I said, the tone should be very polite, it should be well mannered, and you have to use words which are, which sound very polite. Okay, that is the way you design your letter of request. Fine. So just to get back to what we have done, the letter writing format, please do not forget to draw a margin in your papers when you are writing a letter. This margin is required. And if you remember last class, what did I talk to you about a margin? I said your margins should not be as narrow as my finger, right? Use a proper measurement scale and see that the margin of your, the margin that you draw in your book is as broad as that measurement scale. Is that clear? So do not draw narrow margins. Draw it as broad as your scale, and do not give any spaces on the left hand side of the margin. Start from the corner of the margin with the 2. Everything should be in, it should be in one line. If you look at this here, consider this to be the margin. Everything comes one after the other. I haven't spaced anything that I have written here, just to show you this is how you have to write your letter. Do not space anything from the margin. Directly start writing from the margin. And now another important thing about the body of the letter. Now when you are writing the body of the letter, and as I said, for example, you have to complain against something, and your complaint is very big and you have so much to complain. Sometimes, when you have a lot of things to talk about, you have to write it in more than one paragraph. Now, you start writing it from the margin. The body of the letter starts from the margin. My name is so-and-so, I come from Hyderabad. This is where you start. And the continuation of your body of the letter should be from the margin again. And once you are done with one paragraph, don't leave 5 spaces from the margin. The second paragraph also should start from the margin itself. So when somebody looks at your letter, it should look in a straight line. Okay, the letter should be in a straight line, but it should not have that hanging format. In fact, we have that format. The hanging format is where, you write the date on the right hand side, you write the to address on the left hand side, the body in the center. This is hanging here and there, right? That's why it's called the hanging format. So the hanging format is not required. Universally accepted letter is everything written on the left hand side. And if you remember, another thing that I spoke to you about writing the letter on the left hand side is, you do not have to be concerned about punctuation marks. Should I put a comma there? Should it be a semicolon? Should I put a hyphen? Should I put a slash? All that is not required, because you don't use punctuation marks when you're writing everything on the left hand side, except for putting a full stop after the completion of every sentence. And in case you are questioning, inquiry letters will have a lot of questions. In case you are questioning somebody, Do not forget to put a question mark at the end. Don't stop it with a full stop. We all do that. Even a question has a full stop at the end. A question, you should be very careful to put a full stop, to put a question mark after the question finishes, right? So follow this format for all the three letters that I spoke to you about: the inquiry, the complaint, and the request letter. On the pages of your textbook, which is page number 44, 45, and 46, you have different tasks where you are asked to write different types of letters. So I would suggest that you write at least one letter per topic. For example, one inquiry letter, one complaint letter, and one requisition letter. This will actually help you practice writing letters. Alright, I hope this was helpful to you. I will meet you in my next video with a very important topic. Thank you so much.